And it's power to be able to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish in a skilled and efficient manner. And so training is important. All right. So we started talking about in December, volunteers, attracting, motivating, and growing our volunteers into leaders. I mentioned, and I'm going to give a quick just overview to kind of refresh our minds from the holidays to where we were. I mentioned that every church has their challenges with volunteers, with leaders, and sometimes, unfortunately, just those do-nothing saints. Every church has their challenges, but the church was designed to be primarily a volunteer organization. So it is essential to the growth of our congregations that members find their place of service. That's our responsibility to help members see their potential, use their God-given gifts, and grow in their leadership. That's our challenge. And so really, it all starts with the leader. I mentioned that praying for your needs is foundational. We need to be specific, intentional in praying. God, I need a musician. Lord, I need help in the Sunday school department. God hears and answers those cries. If you're pastoring one of our AAC churches right now, or a church, a smaller church that you're growing, or you might have taken the pastorate or assisting in a smaller work. Very first thing that you want to make sure is of your calling, that your calling to that place is without a doubt of God. So that being said, if God placed you there, he placed you there for a reason. And so God wants to hear us cry out for needs like this. He wants us to carefully, diligently grow our congregations. And so we can be very specific with God in what our needs are, not only just our financial needs, but in our needs when we need specific people, we need help in specific areas. We can pray for people that we have in our congregation right now, that God would, just as his word says, if they're a little reluctant to get involved, that God, you can change the heart of rulers, change their perspective on the church, help them to understand what they're involved in and what this is all about. So a lot of it has to do with that foundation of prayer. And then secondly, we talked about that it's the leader's responsibility to model what you preach and what you want others to be doing. Model and teach. We can't be detached and just only on the pulpit and not out in the helping in other areas where it's needed, and leading that and modeling it. All right. Continues on with the vision. And I'm just going to touch a few of these things quickly to bring us up to speed. Continues on with the vision. If whatever you're leading, if you're the pastor, you're the leader of a department, you're the leader of Sunday school, whatever it is, you need to have a vision for that particular area of the work. Our vision in our various departments, of course, first and foremost, needs to align with the overall big picture, the vision from the pastor. That's the big picture. All other visions have to fit within those within that area, within that vision. However, it doesn't mean just because the pastor's got a vision that we can't have a vision for how our departments need to grow, how our departments need to be led, and that sort of thing. So everybody that's a leader should have a vision for their particular area of leadership. Who wants to follow somebody who doesn't have a vision, who doesn't have a game plan, who doesn't have a process going, right? In Habakkuk 2:2, it says, "Write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run that readeth it." People who are following leaders want to know what their vision is, want to know what the game plan is, want to know where they're going. And so we're not talking about leadership here per se tonight. We're talking about getting volunteers. And so, but volunteers are going to be more readily available when they know there's a game plan, when they can feel the momentum going in a particular direction in whatever area they're wanting to, or they're being listed to get involved. So you got to have a game plan to attract, train, and equip the volunteers. Got to have a game plan. Rick Warren, I mentioned in Purpose Driven Church, talks about 5 types of people in a congregation, or 5 circles, 5 congruent circles of people within our churches. The community, which is just right outside our general community. The crowd, those that visit the church occasionally, come and see what's going on. The congregation, those are the ones who maybe are not committed yet, but are casual, part-time attenders, we'll say. And then the committed, those that are faithful. And then the core group. That core group, those are your most diligent volunteers. Those are the volunteers that you're training up into leadership, and your leaders, that core group. So the hotter that core group is, the farther it reaches out into the committed, into the congregation, and it has an effect to draw people, within closer to that core group, and give them challenges them to be involved, more readily be involved. Little side note here. Also, by the way, the notes were attached. I don't know. Hopefully, all you have copied down your notes, and I have altered the notes somewhat and added a few things for tonight. So when I archive this video, I'll have this set of notes with it, so it'll differ from the set of notes that you have. It'll have some additional things on there. But one of the side notes here I want to mention, it's not just smaller works that sometimes have a challenge in getting people engaged. One of the challenges you face in a larger church like that I'm involved in right now, FAC, a larger church, is the assumption that there are no open positions, that everything is already filled up. People come in, they look, they see 150 voice choir, they see all the Sunday school teachers we've got, they see a staff of 20 or 30, hostesses, and our fit team and our ushers, and it might even be more than that, might be 35 or so. And so there is often, they see people running around with, our camera crew and our sound people and our lighting and all the techs, the techs we've got going on and so forth. I'm not saying texts with a T, techs, our tech staff. They see that, and there is that assumption that maybe everything is already filled up. There is not a need. Everything is running smoothly. We don't have a need. And so that's one of the things that we fight. In a larger church, it's very easy to sit back and get lost in the crowd and just relax, so to speak, in the crowd. So every church has its growing pains in that way. It just depends on the type of resistance or confusion you have about involvement. Everybody goes through it, though. We mentioned that it was very important to have systems in place. I mentioned how that every single position in our church, choir, every single position in our church has a system. We used to call them years ago job descriptions. These go beyond just a job description. These identify every function of what is expected of that volunteer. And so, when you begin to have a system, you begin to have a consistent game plan and approach to how you engage volunteers, attract volunteers, train volunteers. Believe me, it makes a big difference, because folks begin to see that you're doing something intentionally. It's not just that you're coming up to them out of the clear blue sky and shooting from the hip and grabbing them and saying, "Can you help me with this?" They see that there is a flow to things in the church. There's a flow to involvement and into leadership and so forth. And so it's important to get everything in a system. And maybe we'll talk about that in more detail. There was a question or two asked last time. I did send Brother Stewart one of our systems. I tried to post one on the resource page, and it didn't get there for some reason, but I'll put a sample of what I mean by a system that we use up on the resource page in the next couple of days. I just got to figure out how to do that. For some reason, it didn't save. But many churches expect very little from their volunteers, and we need to expect more from our volunteers. And I'm just touching on a few things quickly that we talked about last time. That's why I'm blowing through them quickly to kind of get up to where we left off. How you recruit is critical. How you recruit is critical. Rather than focusing on asking people to do a task, emphasis should be placed on developing people into volunteers through personal invitation, training, and then an assignment of the duty. Someone made the statement, sometimes it's better to use a fishing pole rather than a net to acquire volunteers. Being just specific, not just standing up on the platform for the pulpit and saying, hey, we need help in Sunday school, or we need help with hostesses. And that's the last thing you want to do, to be honest with you. You don't want to use a net to get your volunteers. It needs to be a personalized invitation. Recruit face to face. Invite them to coffee, take them to lunch, take them to breakfast. Let them know that it's important to you. Let them know your heartbeat as a pastor, as a leader, why you need them. That why is important. All right. A couple of side notes here. These are some things that are not in your notes, so you might want to make a note. And I hope I'm getting a sign saying my internet is unstable. Hopefully I'm still there. But some side notes. These are some things that I was reading about just this week, and they're very relevant to what we're talking about. Very, very important, what I'm going to talk about right here. Don't rush people into leadership positions. Rush them into ministry, but not into leadership. Don't rush them into leadership. A person can very easily serve without a title or position. They can just serve, learn to minister for a while. There's a reason for that we'll talk about. If a person is not faithful to set out chairs, mow the lawn, make coffee, whatever they're asked to do, they will not be faithful to lead a ministry. Don't get misled into thinking that if we give a person more responsibility, they're going to become more responsible. It does not work that way. A person's color and method, modus operandi, as they say, pretty much is consistent in whatever level of following or leadership. There's a consistency there. The type of follower a person is going to be the type of leader that they become. So they need to be tried out in different positions first to see the level of their commitment and faithfulness and responsibility and so forth. We got to constantly look for opportunities to involve people. We don't want to get caught in the trap. And I know this is easy for some of the smaller church pastors, but don't get caught in the trap of doing everything yourself. Getting in that fear. Well, I hate to bother them. Oh, they're so busy, and I'm the pastor, and I need to get these things done. Or even the mindset, I want it done right, so I'm going to do it. There's a whole myriad there of reasons why we get into the trap of trying to do everything ourselves, or just using a very small handful of people, the same people over and over again, doing those things. We need to look for, scout out opportunities to involve as many people as we can. Understand one of the big keys of keeping new converts is how quickly we can involve them to make it be like it's our church. It's not, we don't go to that church. That's my church. Okay, my church. And so we need to quickly get them adapted into that mindset. And with them just sitting there and observing, it's not going to happen. We need to get them involved. And we'll talk about areas that we can, get people involved that have not totally committed yet in regard to holiness and so forth. The more people involved in serving, the greater chance to discover and develop those who will become your faithful leaders. That's the key there. Positions empower. When we give somebody a leadership title or a position, they're empowered in that congregation. We have empowered them. So it will cost the pastor if it becomes necessary to ask that person to give up that position. If you find out down the road that they're not working out, that's why it's good to really test the waters first. Try to be a little more certain of those that you're plugging into, especially leadership positions, not just a simple serving or ministering in some way, but as soon as they get a title, it's difficult to remove them from it without it causing problems. Dedication, when you're working with volunteers, dedication trumps potential. Dedication trumps their skills and their abilities. Dedication first, commitment first, trumps their potential, what you perceive as their potential, or their skills. Just because someone is skilled does not mean that we can, overlook a multitude of flaws and put them in a leadership position. When you do that, you're guaranteed to have a disaster in the making. You overlook almost any flaw to utilize a really good talent because you really need it, you're guaranteeing disaster in the making. It's better to do without a leader than to have a person of little integrity or spirituality in leadership. You're going to hurt yourself in the long run. You don't want to build on that. And in addition, the other side of that coin is, in addition, people are not stupid. You will discourage them in many ways. People sitting in the congregation know, wow, don't they know what kind of person that is? Don't they know how that person treats people? Don't they know how that person talks? Don't they know how they are outside of church? Don't they see the pride they're walking around with constantly? You see, and so then you've got people sitting there and they're reluctant to be involved because they think then, well, it's a phony. It's look what they're promoting. He's preaching one thing and promoting something else, you see. And you can see the pitch you can fall into with that. You can really hurt yourself in growing your volunteer staff by promoting somebody that should not have been promoted, regardless of the skill set. Our mandate from the Lord Jesus Christ is to make disciples, This is what we're talking about when we're talking about involving people, teaching them to minister, placing them in places of ministry. That's of the Lord. And leadership will rise from that. They'll make themselves evident by their commitment, by their work ethic, by their responsibility, by their faithfulness. All right. All right. I'm on Roman numeral 6. I'm jumping down here because I believe we've covered some of this last week. What exactly are you asking me to do? Okay, we've approached a volunteer. What exactly are you asking me to do? This is one of the keys of having systems in place. Workers must envision how what they do fits into and is a vital part of the big picture. Vital part of the big picture. I try when I am able. Yes, Debbie, you can bring me a throat drop. Thank you. I try my best whenever I am able to address our congregation in talking about outreach and church growth and so forth, to help everyone to realize that every contribution they make aids in the winning of a lost soul and the discipling of a soul. There is no task that is done in the context of that congregation, of any congregation, that does not have some part in the role of, reaching a lost soul. It's not just the person that's teaching the home Bible study or invited the individual in church. Think about the people who clean the church, clean our bathrooms. I'll use this illustration. Let's say we're witnessing to somebody that you work with, and they've been witnessing to him for months. And special service comes up, and finally we're able to break the ice, and this nice couple come to our church. And the first thing they need to do when they walk in the door after driving, we met them there in the lobby, is, hey, where's your bathroom? So now they go into the bathroom, and let's suppose that our cleaning crew didn't do a good job. They didn't do what they're supposed to do. Do we have any idea what a turnoff it would be for them to go in there and there's no toilet paper? The toilet's a mess. It stinks in there, you know. There's water all over the counters and the floor, you know. You understand what I'm saying? You know, so right off the bat, you know, if we understand the idea that people make up their mind about any institution they walk in the first 8 minutes. That's why we call our parking team, our hostesses, and our ushers and our greeters the FIT team, first impression team. That's what we call them, because they're the ones who are out front making that first 5 to 8 minute impression. Key. And so, and we go right on down the line. Every single role, every single responsibility, every single little task that a person does helps in the overall winning and maturing, discipling of a soul. So we're all soul winners. We all work together to grow the body. And this is the mindset we need to get our volunteers into, is that we're all working toward one common goal, our mandate to make disciples, to equip them, to send them out. That's what we do. I call it ACTS, attract, connect, equip. Attract, connect, or ACE, attract, connect, equip. All right. Now, some of the ways that we can approach volunteers is it's not a matter of having to come to a person and having them make a lifetime or a 1 year or a 5 year commitment, anything like that. We can go to a person who we think might be helpful in a particular area that we've met with them. And we talked about building relationships, the importance of building relationships, getting to know folks, what they're about, the kind of work they do and so forth, what their skill set is, what their passion is. These things, this is the importance again of having discipleship classes where these things come out. We begin to develop through various classes what their passion and skill sets are and so forth, like we talked about. And so there's nothing wrong with asking that person, saying, hey, could you do me a favor and help out with this for just a month, just for the month of April? Could you help me out with this? Or 2 weeks, for the next 2 weeks, could you do this for me during service? Could you get this set up? And see, all along the way, there's not necessarily a long-term commitment, but right off the bat, if we're going to find out if they're the type that will be faithful in the small things. Now, also another very, very important requirement in talking about what exactly are you asking me to do, we're trying to create clear expectations here. One of the requirements of every position at FAC, whatever you do, you're a hostess, a sound man, choir, whatever it is, there is no position that this is not required. It's a part of our e-ministry handbook language. You are required to come to pre-service prayer. Now, our pre-service prayer is 30 minutes. Some get there earlier, but we want them to be in there for about at least 15 to 20 minutes of that time. So they need to have pre-service prayer. And it's not just pre-service prayer when they're on duty. It's if they're in that role, and let's say it's a hostess and it's not their night to hostess, it does not mean that they're not supposed to be in there for pre-service prayer. And so that's how we begin to develop them into realizing that, hey, you're setting yourself up in helping to minister in this congregation. And part of that is to make sure that when you come into the house of God and you begin to perform your function, that you're getting your spirit right. You're cleaning everything out and getting right, getting your mindset right. You're having a talk with the Lord, getting your spirit right to be able to do in a right spirit, in a right way, whatever that task is that you've been asked to do. And so that training begins very right from the get-go when they're asked to do just any simple thing to begin to test the waters. Here's what the volunteers should expect to receive: ongoing training. We want to treat our volunteers as professionals. We want to promote a high standard of leadership and hold them accountable. Again, that's why we have the system. It gives us a means of accountability. They're signing the system, signing off on it. They're getting a copy of it. They've signed the e-ministry handbook. So there's a high standard of leadership. Now, let me clarify something here. We call every area of ministry at FAC. Now, this is what we do at FAC. Every area of ministry, we try to instill in the individual that they are in leadership. Now, there are levels of leadership. They're not necessarily a department head or a ministry leader. But the way this is our thinking about it, and we talk about this in the last couple of classes of our discipleship class, in that part that I call fitly framed. This is where these things come out. The reason being that in anything that anybody does, if you're in the choir, whatever, name any position: Sunday school teacher, Sunday school secretaries, a worker in the Sunday school class, a greeter, an usher. Anything that you're doing that people see you doing when they come in, you're visible. So therefore, in some way, you are wielding some level of influence. Just because you're up front, you're being seen. You're standing there when other people are sitting. You're at the head of a class if you're a Sunday school teacher. So every specific area that a person is ministering, we consider them to be leaders, because they are in essence showing themselves to stand out above the crowd that is doing nothing, right? So therefore, they have some level of influence, and that's exactly what a leader is. A leader is someone who influences, has the ability to influence someone. John Maxwell said, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So looking at that very basic structure, we consider every volunteer to be in some level of leadership, okay? Just by virtue of the fact that they're operating in front of other people, performing whatever their task is, all right? So they're held accountable as in a higher standard because they are in leadership, they are seen, and so there's an accountability. Now, we need to check in some measured way on their well-being as volunteers, how they're doing spiritually, how they're feeling about their role and so forth, not just checking on their performance. You know that, people go through seasons of life. We hate to see somebody step down for a while, but it happens. It's better they step down if they've hit a rough spot in their walk and it's affecting their leadership or ministry in the church and sending a wrong message. It's better they step down for a while and revive and recoup and get back involved, maybe somewhere else. Maybe they're burned out with that particular area, then maybe they'd like to go a different direction in some other department. These are things that we need to teach the department leaders or ministry leaders, or if everybody in one of the smaller churches is directly answers to the pastor needs to be aware of that, needs to be on top of that, be sensitive to that. And so we need to have opportunities, what we call off-ramps and on-ramps. We have to offer chances for them to step away for a while with dignity if they need a break, not making them feel like they're backslid and their bums are no longer wanting to help, and this sort of thing, making them feel guilty because they're going through a rough patch. All right. Several ways we need to continue to recognize and affirm our workers. Occasionally have a meal with them. We talked about that. Take them for coffee, maybe have lunch. It's good to have an annual leadership banquet, appreciation banquet, letting them know, man, you're making a difference. We love you. We appreciate what you're doing. We wouldn't be what we are without you. And that's the truth in churches. Volunteer help, makes churches move forward. Take pictures of volunteers when they're working, when there's a project going on. Make sure somebody there is taking some pictures, and use occasionally during offering on the screen during pre-service and during offering, showing some things, some groups working together and the fun they're having and making crazy faces or whatever, just showing, hey, look what they did here, the finished product. Hey, here's the team. Look what they did this weekend. Or you understand what I'm saying? Making sure that it's visible. Volunteers they're visible. They're out front. They're being appreciated. Again, it's just throwing it out there, so to speak, as salt, if you will, making it look a desirable, fun thing to do. If I'm just sitting in a congregation, here's a group I'd like to get involved with. I'd like to know them more. I'd like to be a part of that team. And that's what our goal is. Appreciation needs to be lavished on them, though, sometimes personally, sometimes publicly. All right. Here is an excerpt that I have. If you have your notes, this is just an excerpt from the introduction of our e-ministry handbook that I was talking about. And I don't know who all is on here tonight. Let me just see real quickly here who we have here. Do we still have people with us? Let me see who we have here. Okay. Brother Rodriguez, how are you?
I'm doing okay, brother. I appreciate everybody's prayers, still navigating through everything right now. But
for those that may not know, Brother Rodriguez's father died suddenly just a couple of weeks ago. And so we've been praying for him, and let's keep his family in prayer down in Daytona, Florida. But good to see you with us there, Brother Rodriguez. God bless.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate everybody's prayers and everyone sending text messages. And, it's a hard time for us, but God's going to get us through.
All right. I'm going to read this here. This is just talking about when somebody volunteers, just gives you an idea of how we try to encourage them with some of the benefits of being a volunteer. It says, we're glad to have you as a member of the First Apostolic Ministry team. This handbook is being presented to you to help you feel a part of the team and to give you some information you will need concerning the expectations and the benefits of being a team member. It is important for you to familiarize yourself with this handbook and abide within its guidelines to the best of your ability. Just what are some of those benefits? To be honest with you, it's not all fun. There is hard work and much to be learned. You will sacrifice many hours of time. However, you will gain a lot also. For example, the joy of working for the Lord, the satisfaction in helping to mold lives for Jesus Christ, working in a clean Christian environment, no quarreling and arguing among your fellow laborers, there ought not be anyway, no hearing dirty or off-color jokes, spirit-filled team members of the same faith, not having to endure criticism for your beliefs, develop excellent people skills, make new and lasting friendships, learn the elements of teamwork, develop other useful life skills. And so this is your handbook. It tells you what commitments are expected of you as a leader. Again, we call everybody leaders. Become familiar with it and refer to it often. If after reading this booklet you have any further questions or need any clarification, please feel free to ask. And so that is just the introduction, and then it goes into all of the body of it. If any of you would like a copy of our e-ministry handbook, just let me know. You can email me or text me or whatever, and I will be sure to shoot you off a copy of that for you to take a look at. We've sent that off, and some people, alter it. I know that Brother Traxler was talking about how that he made it work for used it as the skeleton to make it work for their congregation and so forth. And so it's there for you if you need to take a look at that or get some ideas. All right. But the whole idea, if you understand what I'm trying to get across to this point, is to instill the idea that, and this is what we need to do, instill the idea, and for them to understand what a privilege it is to work for the Creator of the universe. What a privilege it is to work in the body of Christ. The benefits of it, and it's many other benefits of working within the body of Christ, that they will receive in their life, learning to give more than they expect to get when they come to church. That they get in that mindset of service instead of serve us, like many have. That's what we need to instill in them. And sometimes it takes that personal touch and a couple of approaches to do that. But the quicker we can get people involved, the more chance we have of them connecting with the body and staying with us. Here's some miscellaneous tips. Teach your leaders not to personally recruit on their own. That can be a nightmare. So, what I've always taught, and what we do here at FAC, and I know they've instilled it here also long before I came, but if we know somebody that we think would do good in some area, we bring that to the people who make those decisions. We don't go to them first and say, hey, would you like to be involved in Sunday school teacher? And the person say, yeah, man, I'd love to be involved in Sunday school teacher. And then they go and they ask Brother Erickson or to talk to Brother Erickson, whatever. And then it turns out Brother Erickson says, oh no, there's some things, there's some reasons why. I don't want to get into it, but no, we can't do that. Well, see, now how do you go back to that person and say, oh, well, I talked to Brother Erickson and he doesn't want you to be a Sunday school teacher. Well, now you're going to be like, what do you mean? Why? What did I do? So you never want to do something like that. You want to make sure, first of all, if your leaders, train your leaders, if they have somebody in mind to become a team member, that it is run through whoever it is that has that responsibility, which 99% of the time is going to be a pastor, associate pastor, something like that knows their walk, their level of commitment, so forth, whether they're giving to the church, all those things that are required for several reasons. All right. So that needs to be instilled in them, that they don't go directly to that person. They can go with a name, but they don't go to that person directly. All right. I mentioned this last week, Brother Traxel. I don't believe he's with us tonight, but Brother Traxel had asked me last week in referring to our e-ministry. I mentioned on the one hand that there were many positions that we could get, volunteers involved in who had not already made a full commitment as far as holiness and so forth. And that indeed is the situation. Now, yes, we do have all of our volunteers for all of our, regular positions sign our e-ministry handbook. I'll talk about some things in a little bit that don't require signing e-ministry handbook initially. Okay. I'll get to that at the end of this tonight. Where are we? Okay. But for all, 99, maybe 95% of all the positions at FAC, they sign our e-ministry handbook. All right. However, as I mentioned, the length of time they've been there, the direction that they're going in their walk, all factor in to how closely, so to speak, if I can put it this way, their feet are held to the fire on some of the areas of holiness initially if they've just got in. Bear in mind, you can get in our choir, for example, having just been baptized and not even getting the Holy Ghost yet. But you're actively seeking the Holy Ghost. You're maybe involved in discipleship or a home Bible study, and you're moving in that right direction. So again, the selectiveness of your volunteers increases with the size and the quality of your available pool of volunteers, if that makes any sense. Okay. So obviously in some of the smaller churches, you maybe can't be as selective initially to fill some roles to be able to help get things going. All right. We need to encourage, instruct each department head, ministry leader to cultivate a very positive attitude within their team while doing the work of the Lord. Nobody wants to volunteer for something that looks like it's going to be a stone drag, right? Everybody wants to be involved in something that's going to lift them in some way, help them in some way also, encourage them. looks like it's fun to be involved in. So we need to structure things that way. 3 reasons people are not involved, that they don't get involved. We can't automatically assume uninvolved members are just lazy. Some people feel useless. They just lack self-confidence, self-esteem. They feel they have nothing significant to offer. These need to be instructed. These people, they need to be instructed that, hey, we all are, created in the image of God. God has a game plan for all of us. We all have some skills. We all have some place we fit into the body and can be a constructive part of that body. All right. But some people just feel useless, and we need to work with them. Some people are hurting. Some spiritually, they've been hurt by ministry or members, and that is stuck with them. And so it takes careful cultivating and working with someone to bring them out of that shell and from behind that wall. Because of their past, they're hesitant to get involved again. They were real involved, and they got burned or burned out and fell away. And now they're afraid to be too involved again. These need to be loved. They just need to be loved. Those that are hurting for any one of those reasons just need to be kind of loved back into the fold, and the joy of being an active member of the body, being involved, connected with people, and feeling they're responsible for some role in the functioning of that congregation. And then you got category 3. Some are just lazy people. They just simply don't want to serve. Their attitude, as I mentioned, is serve us, not service. Problem with laziness is it's contagious. And people like that need to carefully be challenged to get involved, to be challenged, not just sit around and, feast at the table, so to speak, without serving in some way and contributing to the meal, contributing to the food, so to speak. So they need to be challenged occasionally, whether it's from the pulpit, whether it's personally in love. They need to be challenged to get involved and get out of that mindset. Now, here are some leadership struggles when we're working with volunteers. We talked about this lesson is supposed to be attracting volunteers, equipping volunteers, motivating volunteers, and growing them into leadership roles. Some of them, not all of them, will be grown into department heads or future ministers or anything like that. But, some we're going to try to grow into leaders, obviously. We want to mentor people into leadership, into a place of usefulness and effectiveness in the body of Christ. So here are some things that obviously we need to watch out for in who we're developing or giving a position to too quickly. This kind of goes along with what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned about we need to rush to get people involved in ministry. That's Bible. We should all be ministering in some way, but we do not need to be rushing to get people into leadership. Don't need to rush to fill a role in leadership. I think that a lot, and I just this week in some things that I've been reading has convinced me that so often we put such unrealistic expectations on our even AAC pastors, home mission pastors. And, you guys go into these works with so often such unrealistic expectations. And then the time comes 6 months, a year down the road, you didn't fulfill them, or you don't think you have fulfilled them in the eyes of those who keep asking you, how many were in service this week? How many of you had baptized? How many Bible studies do you have? And you begin to feel like a failure. You begin to feel like you're doing something wrong. And, growing a church, building people, building disciples, building a good, strong leadership team takes time. It takes work, and it takes time. Now, you can help yourself by increasing your skills and knowledge of how to work within these situations to help yourself, to help people along the path of discipleship. There's definitely things you can do. You don't want to be lazy in your role. By the same token, the pendulum swings both ways. You don't want to put such unrealistic expectations on yourself that you walk around discouraged all the time or feeling like a failure. You gotta watch that. So I'm saying that in the context of not feeling like if we need somebody in a particular position, that we need to just get somebody there quickly so we can get to that next place. Because often a decision like that is not going to get you to that next place quicker. What it's going to do is cause you to take a longer time to get to that place, because you're going to go through a cycle of finding that maybe that person didn't work out for that position and he's discouraged, and now you're discouraged and losing faith in your ability to discern people and their skills and develop people. It is a vicious cycle. So I just think that all I'm saying is I think we need to walk very carefully, move slowly. It's the way the Lord did it. Bear in mind, 3.5 years, the Lord developed 12 people. One of them hung himself, okay? So he developed personally, while on earth, 11 people that took the banner, okay? So just don't put undue pressure on yourself. Move carefully, move intentionally. Work with people individually, not as a group, individually. So here's some struggles that volunteers will have that we've got to watch out for, that should be flags for us to not just bump them up into leadership. Okay, I'm talking genuine leadership, not just what we're calling leadership at FAC. Number one is if a person has a bunch of personal issues. I mean, are they having all kind of marital problems or all kind of problems with their kids? Just personal issues in their life as far as certain attitudes. There's a whole litany of things that come under the category of just personal issues. Are they just all filled with themselves with personal issues? That it's going to be difficult for them to be the kind of leader that you're looking for that particular position. Personal issues will be a real leadership struggle. The next one should be like a no-brainer, but a non-spiritual type of person. We never want to designate someone a leader who does not pray, fast, and worship, who is not bought into and understanding the value and importance of prayer, fasting, and worship in their walk. How effective could they possibly be in attracting others closer into your core group? Ultimately, you're wanting to grow your core group, right? Third thing is inconsistency. And this can be, and Brother Rodriguez, you had mentioned this, that I believe that, one of the questions you had asked a session or two ago, it might have been last session, was concerning someone that, you've got this person in a leadership role, and now you're finding out they're being inconsistent, and what do you do? And see, this is why we need to be very, very careful. We can have people in areas of ministry without actually giving them a title until there's been some proving time, because it becomes a little sticky, a little awkward when they're there and we need them, but they're being inconsistent. And so, in those situations, obviously that's going to take some of those personal coffees and kind of pouring out your heart and doing the very best that you can, mixed with prayer, to see if that person's understanding level begins to change, their spirit began to change, or you get to the root of what's causing that inconsistency. It can be any number of things. That's something that you'll have to analyze between you and God when those things happen. But inconsistency, an inconsistent leader is not what you want to have on your leadership team. Someone who, sometimes they just don't show up for church, or, they call. Yeah, they're good about calling, but it's way too many times they're calling, but they got every excuse under the sun. They're sick, they're working, the car broke down, it's too hot, it's too cold, whatever, my baby's sick, all of these things. Inconsistency in their prayer life, inconsistency at being in the prayer room, coming to church at the last minute, not being at pre-service prayer. Inconsistency, that's what I'm talking about. Not good leaders. And then a person who is right now a volunteer that you possibly think you're grooming or look to grooming for a leadership role to move to that next level. The next category here that I have, And these are in the notes that will be in the archive when I put it with it. These are some of the things that I added that are not in your notes, by the way. But number 4 is a non-influential type person. If a person as a volunteer doesn't seem like the type that they're going to be able to attract people or influence people, remember the very core of what a leader is. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. If they don't seem to have the capacity to influence people, and you're looking at them to lead a group as opposed to just maybe operating a camera, working a computer, maybe it's just somebody with great graphics or graphics whiz and you've got them in that way, that's great for that. There are places to put people that that aren't people of influence, that aren't going to lead a team, that are just responsible people that can play a great role in some area of need in the church. You got to disseminate between those two types of people, those two types of role, where you need to plug those people in. But a person that is non-influential, you do not want to put on a team, because they will not be able to influence them to do the things that need to be done. Okay, and then there comes the number 5, which is lack of vision. If a person does not have the skills to be able to, if you, in other words, if you say, hey, here's the goal, here's our goal, it's out there. Goals are great, but without a game plan, a detailed step-by-step game plan to get to that goal, it's not a goal, it's a wish. Okay, there's a difference between a wish and a goal. And so if they're being placed in a leadership role or planning to place them in a leadership role, and you have not noted in them that ability to have the organizational skills to develop a step-by-step plan to obtain to a vision, or they have no vision. If you sit them down and say, you're talking to them about various departments, and maybe they would say, oh man, here's what I would do in that department. And you say, hey, this guy's got some good ideas. He's got some vision there. See, that's one of the signs that'll help you to realize we can plug him in somewhere. He's a thinker. He's a guy that's looking ahead, who's looking at how things are done now and maybe how they can be done better. See, those are the kind of people you want to plug into leadership. But a person who just seems to lack no vision at all and is just status quo is fine with them, you don't have a leader, you have a manager. And so you need to put them more into a management role with somebody who has good leadership skills, okay, that's got vision. And then another area, obviously, if you've got some volunteers who who have a lack of work ethic, lazy people do not make good leaders. If you've tried them out in a couple of different positions, and every time you let's say you've got them, you got them on a crew to help out with the maintenance of the church on a Saturday. The guys get together and do some maintenance on the church, and you notice that he's a guy that, unless somebody's looking, he's not doing anything. They put him in a room to do something, and you look and he's on Facebook or he's texting friends or something like that. And as soon as somebody sees him, he acts like he's doing busy work. If you lack a work ethic and you're lazy, you're not going to be a good leader, right? So some things are just kind of common sense. All right. This was where my time was here. I apologize if I'm running a minute or two over, but I'm not going to bring this anymore here. I'm going to answer a question right now. This was sent to me, and I'm not even sure by who, but it said, what about someone that wants to be used but isn't ready? Somebody in the congregation that wants to be used but isn't ready. Now, I don't know all the details, and I like to look at things as like individual, why aren't they ready? How long have they been there? What exactly does that mean they're not ready? But anyway, here is just some ideas here. Anybody can be used in these kind of areas. And these are some of the things that I'm talking about, where with FAC, you do not need to sign e-ministry handbook, building maintenance when we need help, landscaping help, set up and breakdowns for different functions that we have. If we can get them to say, hey, we're doing this particular event on Saturday night, would you mind being here to give us a hand, getting set up and so forth, and just kind of working with the team? That's the kind of thing that you pull somebody in to begin to see right away. What kind of person are they? Are they a worker? Are they committed? Will they help? You have a person who maybe is skilled in making props, something to sign our e-ministry handbook. if you've got good skills in helping to make props for a play. I'm just throwing out examples. We have an event and it needs some help bringing food or making food or working in the kitchen or serving. You sign an e-ministry handbook for that. As soon as you're ready to volunteer for that, it's fine. We've had people that have helped out in different areas before who weren't 100% on our holiness standards. It happens all the time. You may have a food bank or a clothing bank. What's wrong with having them help in that? Volunteer and helping in that way. What about somebody, you've got an event coming up, or you're making a bunch of, syllabus for some speaking engagement or something, Pastor, and you need somebody to help you make some copies, grab somebody to help you make some copies. Say, hey, could you do me a favor? There are any number of things that we can begin to get in people's minds the importance of serving in the body of Christ and finding out, getting a picture of where they stand, how their spirit is about that, and giving us a point of contact to begin to develop them to the next level of getting involved. Okay, the importance of getting involved, the joy and the that comes of getting involved and giving out to others and helping in a church. The last thing I'll mention here, I mentioned here in the outline resources. These are some really good books. I strongly suggest that you guys dig into some of these things and be readers. Look into these things. It'll answer a lot of your questions, help you, give you a lot of ideas of what we're talking about here. These are just some that I threw out there, and I'll throw these up on our resource page with maybe links to where to get these books. I'll have a whole section on there shortly on books and resources in that